The world often believes wars begin with explosions, but sometimes wars are stopped by silence, by closed airspace, by denied permissions, by a simple word? No. There was a moment when tensions in the Middle East were so high that one single missile could have ignited a regional war involving superpowers, oil economies, and millions of innocent lives. A moment when the standoff between United States and Iran was reaching a breaking point. Fighter jets were on standby, warships were deployed, missile systems were activated, and intelligence reports suggested that a strike could happen at any time. The atmosphere was thick with fear. News channels talked about imminent action, military analysts predicted retaliation, and markets trembled at the thought of another Middle East war, because everyone understood one thing clearly. If the United States attacked Iran, Iran would not stay silent. Iran is not a small, defenseless nation. It has one of the largest missile programs in the region, thousands of drones, powerful regional allies, and most importantly, geography. Geography that gives it reach across the entire Middle East. And that is where the real danger began. Because scattered across the Middle East are dozens of American military installations. Bases filled with soldiers, jets, bombers, and command centers. These bases exist in countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Kuwait. For years, these locations have helped America project power across the region. But in a war with Iran, these same bases would instantly become targets. Iran made that message crystal clear. If attacked, it would not strike America directly. Instead, it would hit American bases nearby. Missiles would fly toward the Gulf. Airfields could be destroyed. Oil facilities could burn. Cities could fall into chaos. Then suddenly, countries that had nothing to do with the conflict would find themselves on the front lines. This wasn't just politics anymore. This was survival. A single American strike on Iran could transform half the Middle East into a battlefield overnight. Oil prices would skyrocket. Global trade would collapse. Flights would stop. And the world economy could feel the shock within hours. The threat was no longer theoretical. It was real. And then, something unexpected happened. Instead of choosing sides, instead of allowing their territories to become launchpads for war, regional countries began to push back, quietly, carefully, but firmly. Among the first to send a strong signal was Pakistan. Pakistan made it clear that its airspace would not be used for any military action against Iran. No American fighter jets would cross its skies. No missiles. No drones. Nothing. At first glance, this may sound simple, but in modern warfare, airspace is everything. Warplanes need routes. They need refueling corridors. They need fast, direct access. Without that access, operations become slower, more expensive, and strategically risky. By closing its skies, Pakistan didn't fire a shot, but it built a wall. A wall that complicated any potential strike plan, and Pakistan wasn't alone. Across the Gulf, similar messages began to emerge. Saudi Arabia signaled caution. Qatar hesitated. The UAE showed restraint. Bahrain and Kuwait also grew wary. These nations understood something very important. If America launched attacks from their soil, Iran's retaliation would land on their cities, their airports, their oil refineries, their homes. They would pay the price, not Washington, not Tehran, but them. So one by one, they reduced cooperation for offensive action, airspace restrictions, operational limits, political warnings. For perhaps the first time in years, these countries were united not by alliances or rivalry, but by fear of destruction. Because when missiles fly, they don't ask who is friend or foe. They simply hit. Meanwhile, inside Washington, military planners had reportedly prepared options. Targets were mapped. timelines discussed, orders considered. The region was closer to confrontation than many civilians realized. And yet, with every closed border and every denied air corridor, the strike became harder to execute. Logistics are the backbone of war. Without regional support, even the strongest military faces limits. Suddenly, what seemed easy on paper became complicated in reality. Diplomacy began to outweigh aggression. Even the American president at the time, Donald Trump, known for strong and bold statements, shifted tone. The language softened, from threats to caution, from certainty to hesitation, from "we will act" to "we prefer peace." Was it pressure? Was it strategy? Or was it the realization that the entire region had quietly refused to cooperate? Because no superpower, no matter how strong, can fight alone in someone else's backyard. Without local support, war becomes nearly impossible. And so, the strikes that many feared never came. Jets stayed grounded, missiles stayed stored. The region held its breath and then slowly exhaled. For now at least, disaster had been avoided. But the story leaves behind an important lesson. Sometimes peace isn't achieved by treaties, or speeches, or international summits. Sometimes peace is achieved when nations simply say, "You cannot use our land for destruction." No headlines, no dramatic announcements, just quiet resistance. Airspace denied, bases restricted, cooperation withheld, and a war that never happens. History may never record this moment as a victory. There were no celebrations, no parades, no official declarations. But millions of lives may have been saved because countries chose stability over conflict. Because leaders understood that once war begins, control disappears. And in the modern Middle East, one spark is enough to burn everything. Today, the tension still exists. Politics still shifts. Alliances still change. But that moment proves something powerful. Even smaller nations, when united, can limit the actions of giants. Even superpowers must listen when the region says no. And sometimes, the strongest weapon in the world is simply refusing to open your sky. So the question remains, was this a lasting peace? Or just a pause before the next storm? Only time will decide. But for one critical moment in history, the Middle East stepped back from the edge, and the world avoided another war.